You are now listening to the Molten Fantasy Sports Podcast.
Yes, you are listening to the Molten Fantasy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Brain, Supercoach Brain, and I'm joined by my co-host, as always, Matty, Supercoach Matrix. Mate, plenty happening over the last few days, and we get to reveal our teams, which is probably the most exciting part of the preseason so far.
Yeah, I love these. I've really been enjoying these. Unpacking what I've currently sitting on after changing my teams 500 times a week. So
only 500, mate. You've done pretty well. I reckon I'm at least four figures. Mate, it's also, by the time we get this out, it's actually Team List Tuesday. So by the time this video's out, we're obviously recording on Monday night, so it's Team List Tuesday Eve, and I feel like a kid at Christmas time. How good is it?
Oh, look, yeah, we've got a bit of a sneak peek. Some teams have said a few things. There's been a bit of transparency around the league, which has been nice for a change.
There's also been a bit of smoke and mirrors floating around. Let's face it. You know, I mean, we've got tons of news to talk about before we reveal our teams here. And the first one, and the major one that's basically turned the NRL Supercoach into a spin, has been the Nicho Hynes calf injury. Obviously, there's been multiple sources, tons of different news coming out about Nicho Hynes and whether he's going to be playing round one, whether he's going to get named tomorrow or today if you're watching the video Tuesday. Is he in your team?
No. I haven't had him for most of the year. He was someone I tried to build around at the start, and then I just looked at that price. I looked at the games he was playing. I looked at his scores against some of the better teams in the comp, and I was fading him. I'm actually a bit disappointed he's not playing because I wanted those first few games that he was playing hard teams. I wanted him to be playing, maybe knocking out 60. Hopefully he plays and gets a 50. Yeah, I'm hoping that he plays, but plays a bit hampered, plays a bit down on performance, and ends up dropping a ton of cash so we can pick him up in round 7. That would be perfect scenario for me after the bye. You pick up Nicho Hynes, you ride the train all the way to the station. But yeah, he's not in my team either. I'm going to have Nicho Hynes. I can guarantee I've already started formulating plans to get him in that sort of round 4. Does this change it? Maybe a tad, but yeah, no, I want him by, say, week 6.
Mate, before we dive in, we're obviously going to reveal our teams. We're going to have a chat about a little bit of news that's been floating around. So the Nicho Hynes is just the tip of the iceberg, I think, over what we've heard over the last few days. There are some talking points that we'll touch on that will affect teams coming into Team List Tuesday. But, mate, we've got something really exciting happening at Molten Fantasy Sports, and we've been able to, luckily enough, get the services of one of the top NBA fantasy analysts, I guess we could call him, in Matty Garrett. Mate, we've known Matty for a while now, and I reckon he's the upper echelon of guys that know their NBA back to front, and we'll be lucky enough to have his services for NBA fantasy coming into next season, so just before the draft for 2023. So that's really exciting, Matty.
Yeah. A lot of us met through NBA fantasy and sort of formed some ideas like this, formed an NBA 2K comp and a little bit of that. And yeah, Matty Garrett knows his stuff, and I'm excited. I think he's done a bit of radio and stuff in the past. Can talk. Holy moly.
He does, mate. He's a very good talker. So, you're going to get all the good stuff with him at NBA Fantasy at Molten Fantasy Sports. So that's incredibly exciting for us. So, mate, he's going to show us up for sure. We're going to have to bring our A game, I think. But, mate, let's move into the news, because there's a fair bit going on. And the first one, and probably one of the major ones, and one that's thrown a massive spanner in the works, is Isaiah Katoa kicking off the season. Basically, Uncle Wayne's given him the keys to the car, said, yep, drive us into round 1. And, mate, it's fair to say we were pretty spot on with our analysis with Isaiah Katoa. So what I'll do is I'll play this one back for everybody watching. We can quickly brush over this one, really, can't we?
Oh.
You okay?
That's horrible. I just can't see Isaiah Katoa lining up round 1. Maybe he should, but Uncle Wayne's not going to let it happen. Uncle Wayne, will never allow that to happen. He's got his boy Milford there. He's got Sean O'Sullivan. Isaiah Katoa is not going to be starting round 1. If he is, I will readjust my team and find myself with some extra money somewhere.
and this 215k cheapie that we all hope emerges will, but it's so much easier to go from one of these other guys to a 200k cheapie than it is to have a 200k cheapie, team list pops around, and then suddenly you need to hit panic stations and find yourself with some decent coin to get somebody that's going to play NRL football this year.
Yeah, when he gets a run,
Some sense?
you need to get him in then.
Yep.
And look in round one, if he gets named and Wayne Bennett has an aneurysm or something, and something doesn't make sense, but he gets named instead of someone else, then yeah, great, have a look. But no, don't. He's a placeholder for most people, I assume, at this point in time.
Yeah, but why would you have a 200k placeholder when you've got nowhere to go?
Annexation.
Unless you have a 200k placeholder and you have 220 in the bank. I legit think these people are spending this money elsewhere, and I don't understand why Isaiah Katoa's on their radar. Yeah,
It'll be turmoil on Teamless Tuesday when he doesn't get named. So, we were wrong.
one of probably not my best take.
Probably your worst, to be fair. No, but in saying that, in our defence, right, like this guy was not starting. Milford was the guy. But it's funny how NRL can throw you a curveball. Uncle Wayne, he does what he wants, mate. So he will just basically pick the young fella, sees plenty, and also there's plenty of talent. You know, we know Isaiah Katoa is going to be a serious talent, serious player. He also looked really good in the trials. It's just funny how, I look, to be honest, I'm more than happy to be wrong. And I think we will be wrong a lot, but we'll also be right a lot.
That's the right time to be wrong. How refreshing is it? I don't know how you went with your team, just to be able to go down to 200k, find yourself with 400k and bolster your team elsewhere. These other guys are like, they can wipe the sweat off their brow and sit on what they'd planned. There's maybe some time for some luxury trades if he's in your team. So.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk through our teams very soon, mate. We won't give away too much just yet. But, mate, McLean, the young fella that just broke into the top 30, got himself a top 30 contract over in the Penrith Panthers. And obviously with the Taylor May injury, that position's been up for grabs for a little bit. Now, it looks like McLean may be actually heavily competing for this position. We actually thought that it would have been Taruva that would have just snapped this one up, but it looks like McLean is actually at level pegging to take that right wing position. Which is massive.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that Taruva is a fullback and he's always been a fullback, and maybe they've just seen a little bit of this, maybe at training, I don't really see how we would have struggled to be a winner, but maybe McLean's just an absolute jet. And, I'm excited to see how it pans out because anyone sub 300k in that Panthers team is going to be on my radar.
Mate, Wacko's Whispers. I don't know whether you follow him. You probably should. I'm sure everybody follows him on Twitter.
Yep.
Said that Sean Russell's out suspended for the first two games. I'm not quite sure what to take of that because I haven't really seen any follow-up from that. But that's an interesting take because I saw Sean Russell actually taking a winger position in round one for Parramatta. So that'll actually throw a massive can of worms out because that means Hayes Dunster probably comes in. And I must say, if he gets named on the wing, he is one of the biggest traps this year. Hayes Dunster won't see much time this year.
I think he's got a lot of James Schiller about him. I think if I heard that he was out for, say, 4 weeks, I'd be all over Hayes Dunster. 2 weeks, you're not going to get that price range. He's not a guy that you're going to play, especially with the Parramatta draw that we need to look at. Yeah, I don't think he'll be someone we talk about come our actual team list.
Agreed. Another guy we won't have in our teams is Spencer Leniu, but he's gone to the Roosters in 2024, mate. So that was a big signing for the Roosters. They just keep shoveling players under the sombrero over there. I don't know where they're finding this cash, but that's a really good signing for them, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I do worry for maybe Crichton, maybe one of the Butcher boys. You usually don't buy in a really good player like that and plan to bring him off the bench. I'm presuming they paid him a bit. Penrith thinks a lot of him, want a chip. But maybe it's writing on the wall for one of these really good Roosters players. Maybe Crichton's worse than we maybe thought. So,
yeah, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen there? So, mate, Ruben Cotter's come out, said he wants to be an 80-minute lock which is incredibly exciting for all of us, that follow Supercoach, because Ruben Cotter is the ultimate Supercoach forward. I think we saw it last year, which is why he's so hyped up this year for good reason. And mate, if he plays 80 minutes, you've got to have him, haven't you?
Well, I've had him. He was a lock for, you've been watching our other team lists. He's been a lock for me for a long time. I wish he had a Kiwi accent, but anyway, I'll roll through with that and, enjoy wearing my Maroons jersey.
Fair enough. Mate, Preston set to debut for the Doggies, which is exciting. So we've got a bench forward there that we can look at. I don't know whether he's a look for round one. I'm probably going to go elsewhere. But plenty of talent in this young fella. And obviously we've said over and over again, Gus can pick him. So we'll see how he goes in round one. And Johnny Bateman in doubt for the Tigers in round one. They say that his conditioning just hasn't been up to scratch, which is probably expected, to be fair.
Yeah, and I was hoping that they'd still bring him off on the bench and maybe give him 20 minutes, ease him into it, get him into the system, everything like that. And we did get a bit of a discount later on in the year, because I really like Johnny Bateman, but it's probably smart from the Tigers from a footy standpoint.
Now, mate, the Dolphins have gone the double whammy with the F squared, Farnworth and Flegler, straight over to the Dolphins from the Broncos. So Uncle Wayne's doing a bit of poaching, I'd call it, from Brizzy. What are your thoughts?
I think he's overpaying, and I think he's going to have to overpay to get some quality players. But finally getting some good footy players on the park. You've heard me talk about Flegler, and maybe that cements a bit more of a spot for Marty Tapau. Maybe Marty Tapau's been impressing. I sort of went a bit off Flegler when I saw the Manly rumours, and Herbie. I've heard Herbie wants to be a fullback. So, we don't think a lot of Hammer. I think a bit of Herbie. So, yeah.
Pessi New might be a bit upset about that too, I think, because I reckon he's over there trying to get that position too.
Yeah, but Herbie's good, so.
Absolutely. You'd pick Herbie over those two any day of the week. Mate, the last one, probably the biggest talking point, probably the one that people have been relying on, and the most owned player in NRL Supercoach all preseason is Josh Schuster, being injured. Now, let's talk about the difference between the Schuster and the Hines injuries. Now, NRL Physio if you subscribe to NRL Physio's Patreon, which is $5 a month, you're going to get $500 a month of value from that. He's got an injury profile on nearly every single player in the NRL. I think there's over 300 players in this injury profile, and he's basically talking about the fact that there's a really big difference, even though there's a similarity in injury between Nicho Hynes and Schuster, both injuring a calf and both having a minor strain, whether it's a grade 1 or a grade 2. But the difference is that Schuster has had significant calf injuries in the past. So he's had 3 calf injuries in the last 3 years, which is definitely worth noting when we're talking about rehab as well, because that's a major concern for somebody who could potentially take a little bit longer to recover than what they normally would. So let me run you through this, right? In 2020, Josh Schuster left syndesmosis injury. So syndesmosis, for those of you that aren't on top of the term, is a high ankle sprain. So they're actually a little bit harder to come back from. In 2021, he had a calf strain. And in 2022, he had another syndesmosis injury and surgery and an additional calf strain. So now we're seeing in 2023, he's got another calf strain. It's a major concern. That's a third calf strain and a second syndesmosis injury, which is high ankle. Could we see him actually taking a little bit more time to go through that rehab process? I'd probably say there's a lot more risk there. So this is a big talking point for us, because Schuster is probably one of the most relevant players in Supercoach at the moment. That's, people are asking, do I start with him? Do I sit him? Do I not start? How do I play it? So that'll be a really big talking point, I think, Matty.
Yeah, 5'8", second row forward dual. I've actually heard that his conditioning hasn't been very good throughout the off-season, and they weren't that happy with that, which obviously they were right. If he's got some high ankle injuries, it's a bit of a worry. I noticed on some of the socials, and I'm not 100% sure, but a man called David Schuster that says that he's Josh Schuster's brother said not to expect him until at least round 4. I don't have any validity in anything like that, but I don't think it's important enough that anybody would go and make a David Schuster page and start saying it's his brother. I actually believe it a little bit, and yeah, we might not be seeing him. That bye helps. That bye definitely helps. But yeah, no, we might not be seeing him. We might be seeing a bit of Cooper Johns.
We may be.
Maybe Cooper. Like, if they've been unhappy with Josh Schuster's weight and conditioning, if Cooper Johns comes out, lights out, hey, who knows?
At this stage, there is a lot of concerns around his conditioning and a lot of concerns around where he's at the moment, and especially now this injury. Mate, there's red flags all over the shop. So you've definitely got to go in with two eyes open on this situation. So, mate, plenty of news. We could probably talk about news forever, but Teamless Tuesday is tomorrow. So by the time this gets out, Teamless Tuesday will be literally a few hours away. So, mate, let's get stuck into our teams. You can start us off. I'm just going to share my screen. So for everybody watching us on YouTube, make sure to tune in here. You're going to get a good view of Matty's team here.
I can't wait to see Matrix Reloaded on the big screen.
It's going to be a banger. So
look at that.
It's beautiful, isn't it? So, mate, do you want to kick us off? Take us through your team. Talk us through a little bit of the reasoning behind those positions as well. We'll start at hooker and we'll work our way down.
Yeah, so I started with Reece Robson. I got him in pretty much straight away. I see him as one of the only guys that can compete with Harry Grant this year, and I wanted to use my 120K elsewhere. I find hooker a position that doesn't have that high of a ceiling. I sort of expect the 80s. It's not somebody that I get out there, do the VC, do the C on. I definitely see a lot of merit to going cheap this year at hooker, but I'm splashing the cash. I really like the Cowboys draw, which I'll mention for the 204th time. And Reece Robson locked him in. In some of our earlier shows, I know that you've said that you can see Reece Robson competing with Harry Grant. A lot less chance of playing Origin with gents like Appy and Cook in that New South Wales team. Do you have anything to add on Robson there, Braino?
No, you hit the nail on the head with Robson. I'm pretty high on Robson this year. I won't give away too much with my team, but Brandon Smith is a no-brainer. But Robson specifically, I think he could score your 70 plus 75 average for the year, which he showed that he can do that last year. And when you're getting 120K discount to start the year, you can do a lot with 120,000 to start your team off. And I think you've got to make sure you've got to get as many points for your cash as possible to start the season, and then find your cash cows that are going to gain your cash as well. So really nice medium there that you found with Robson.
Yeah, and I'd like to think that I'm going to have Harry Grant at some stage throughout the year. I really think after round 20 that the Storm's draw really opens up, and maybe we've got some blokes like Pappy and everything in there, and maybe it's a play because we know Robson plays a lot of his, really good games or really, really good matchup games at the start in that first 13 weeks. Hopefully covers a bit over the bye period. So, happy to have Robson. But Brandon Smith, I think that he should be really highly owned. I think 470K is absolute no-brainer in that Roosters team. They didn't look that good in the trials, but I look at this team and you go have a play, and I always find myself wanting more Roosters in my team, especially with the Dolphins being the first game of the year.
I've had to be really careful with not over-roostering my team, to be honest.
Yeah, you can only have so much cock in your teams, so
got to be careful, mate. Mate, 49.5% own Brandon Smith now. He's creeping up to that 50 mark. So, which is
he should be.
It completely makes sense. Yep.
I don't understand the people fading Brandon Smith, to be honest.
No, it doesn't make sense for me either, mate. He's 478K. I think he's priced on like a 44 average or something. You just take that to the bank. You let him get his 55 to 60 average, which we know he's probably going to churn out in the first few weeks. With the Roosters' good draw, there's a good chance he gets some attacking stats in that as well. So I'm more than happy to just ride Brandon Smith to the bank. And then, look, you get to a point where you might be able to upgrade Brandon Smith to a keeper. Mate, happy days. That's basically why we play the game, is to turn Brandon Smiths into Harry Grants. Yeah. That should be your goal.
Important to note, he does have that Kiwi accent too. So, will be pivotal over the Origin period. So,
big time. Mate, take us through your front rowers.
Ruben Cotter, I've had him, again, from word dot, as soon as I started working out that draw. Probably before I started working out that draw, to be honest. We did just have a chat about the fact that he does want to be an 80-minute lock. I was happy with 55, 60 minutes in the front row. He regressed, his scores regressed a little bit at the end of last year, and I think we're getting him at a discount. I might already have at 620k. I could have the best front row forward in my team already. So I think that he'll compete with Tarpany.
Yeah, that's huge. That's a huge call. Okay. I think he's going to be consistent. I think he's going to be a guy that gets you 70. I don't know whether he competes with Tarpany. That's a massive call.
Tarpany's priced on a 70 average, man. Like,
we're
talking.
Do you think Tarpany averages 70 for the full season, or do you reckon he goes bigger?
I'm not sure. I'm honestly not sure. I think either way, I think that they can both score around the same. So
okay, cool.
Especially if Cotter's playing 80 minutes,
mate. That's huge. That is huge news. But the fact that he wants to versus what Todd Payton wants him to do are two very, very different things. We saw that Taumalolo wanted to play 60 last year and he played him 50, 45. So we know Todd Payton does what Todd Payton wants to do. So it'll be interesting to see how they use Cotter this year. But imagine having a bloke that can play through the middle for 80 minutes on your team. You'd surely be taking advantage of that.
Oh, if Ruben Cotter come to me and said, I want to play more minutes, I would play him more minutes.
Fair enough. You can't really resist the mullet either, can you? Serious haircut.
Queensland's best. There's plenty of that up here.
Speaking of Queensland's best, maybe not best, but he's up there. How about your second guy?
Christian Welch come into my team right around that news about him being the captain. I always talked about the fact that he was going to be the leader of this pack. But coming in, he looked good in the trials. He was offloading. He was running lines. And again, to throw back to someone like the NRL physio, just reminding that a lot of people come back from an ACL after that sort of 6 or 7 months. And was it Achilles or ACL? Achilles, sorry. And they're a bit hampered. But he's had that extra time. He wasn't ready to come back by the end of last year. And he's had the whole off season and he looks really good. The eye test was there. I had Saifidi and he didn't impress me in the trials. And I know it's just the trials, but when you can save some money on Christian Welch over Saifidi, you just lock him in. You hope that he goes up to that sort of 600k, but he could be a guy that you have all year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing for Christian Welch is he going to be allowed to offload? Is Bellamy going to let him offload? Because we know that Bellamy's very well known for making sure that his front rowers tuck the ball under the arm. They don't do anything fancy. They get their meters up the middle. And then obviously they use their outside backs to expand the field. Now, what we saw was very promising from Christian Welch throughout the two trials. We saw that he got the arm free a few times and flicked a few out the back. So, mate, as soon as he did that for me in the first trial, as soon as he got those couple of offloads, he was cemented in my team. And then obviously the captaincy news basically just completely locked him in for me as well. So I'm with you. I'm completely with you on Christian Welch. I reckon he's going to have a massive year this year.
And I think you were a guy that had Dan Saifidi too. I think it should be noted that Saifidi's going to have these games where he scores a try, and I'm not sure Welch has that in him. But I think it's going to be good enough at that 460k. Yeah, I get him at a discount, aren't you?
Yeah, massive. Mate, he could be a 600k front rower comfortably. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So I know we're talking about my team, but there's a lot of similarities. Some would say there's 4 similarities between yours and mine in the front row. And I'm going to let you talk about your Tigers boy, Stefano. Can't pronounce his name.
Yeah, Stefano Utoikamanu, I think it is.
Utoikamanu. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. Mate, Stefano's a beast. I'm picking him. There's a bit of emotion involved in this pick because I'm a Tigers supporter. And also the fact that he's had a rough couple of years. He's had a couple of injury-riddled years. We want to see him do well. I want to see him do well as a Tigers supporter, and he's just got so much talent. This guy is a seriously good footballer, and we know that he's going to come out and prove a point this year. He's going to want to do that. I feel like 319,000, mate. You're paying more for Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow in your team than you're paying for Stefano, who will probably knock out 50 for you every single week in base stats. That's the way that I see this going. Look, and don't get me wrong, he will have some a little bit more quieter games where he might bash out 40, 45, whatever it be. But even 45 average is going to get you to 450k. So I think he's 150k underpriced at the moment if he plays 40 to 50 minutes.
So a lot of guys are listening. I've actually seen the Hammers, which I don't know why I'm talking about the Hammer, but I've actually seen the Hammers ownership go down about 13%, and Stefano is now 38% owned. So people listening to the pod, people are having a look at him. I'm probably not as confident as you. You'll notice that the reserve tag isn't on him for week 1. I had toyed a lot with maybe not having Welch or Saifidi and him being my second guy, and I just don't have the confidence in that yet. But yeah, he'll get the opportunity to earn my confidence, earn a bit of cash, and he's on Matrix Reloaded.
There's a lot going on at the Tigers as well. You want a bit of security, you want a bit of certainty around what he's going to be able to do in the front row. But if he gets named in the 8 or the 10 jersey, it's an easy lock and load in the front row, which is quite a weak position this year. So
yep.
I'm happy to take a risk on a guy that is probably 15 points underpriced.
I'm actually surprised the way that we've spoken about front row and how we've said a lot of times that we want to save a lot of money in the front row, and we actually have ended up spending a bit of cash in the front row in these 4 positions. Cotter coming out and saying a few things, Welch looking so good, Stefano looking so good. Yeah, like there is a lot of merit to saving some money and putting the money in your second row. But yeah, we're having a crack. You just expect a little bit more of a slow burn in the front row. Stefano's not going to be worth, $600K. Like he's not going to be worth what Taylor May was worth, for example. I just think we need to temper our expectations a little bit.
Yeah, agree with that. But I also think when you've got a really weak position, it's quite comforting to be able to slot a few guys in that you can really rely on for pretty much the full season. I mean, I don't know about you, but I could actually see Cotter and Welch just sitting in my front row all year. I mean, you get to a point where potentially a Tarpany bottoms out and you go Welch to Tarpany. Happy days. Yeah, of course you do that. But I wouldn't necessarily be upset to rely on those two, Cotter and Welch, to be able to just chip away in the front row, get themselves obviously a 60 each week. And I'd happily just leave that, and then I've obviously spend elsewhere and try and find those high upside positions that we've spoken about a fair bit throughout as well. So, mate, I guess it's quite slim pickings in the front row this year. There's guys like Tom Gilbert. Have you looked at him at all?
No, I just don't think the Dolphins have enough. When you have a look that he played for the Cowboys and he averaged 47 on good minutes, maybe he gets a small minutes uptick, but they've still got blokes like Kenny Bromwich and all these other really talented guys. I think he's the best in the front row that they've got. I don't really see him playing lock, even though there's a bit of chat about it. I think that they'll look a bit elsewhere, and I think his best position's in the front row, but they've probably paid a lot for him. I just can't see him really being worth it. And I think at $500K, someone like Stefano, he's still more expensive than Christian Welch. Put that into perspective. I know he's coming off an injury. My issue with Cotter and Welch in my team is that Origin period, but I'll tackle that. Stefano won't be playing Origin. Hopefully he can be a plug and play some weeks. Davy Moali's not someone that I'm confident in playing, and we'll lead into him with a few injuries in the Rabbitohs. Davy's found his way into a lot of teams. I think it's 18%, and he looks pretty good. The issue is probably that Shaq Mitchell. But I see a fair bit of job sharing. I think Davy's probably the pick out of Shaq Mitchell and Moali. What do you think?
That's a no-brainer, mate. Davy Moali has been talked about all preseason. The Rabbitohs are high on him. They like him. When you've got injuries to Harm Saleh and Saliba Havili as well, that really opens the door for Moali to find some minutes in the front row rotation. Obviously, Tavita Totola is probably going to be the mainstay of that front row. So you're going to see him playing 50 to 55 minutes, but there's going to be plenty of opportunity in that bench rotation as well to get some decent minutes. You could see 40 to 50 minutes from Moali, depending on how they play that there.
I'll be very happy if I see 40 to 50 minutes from Moali.
You'd honestly be happy if you saw 30 minutes, because if he scores at a point a minute, 1.1, you get 35 points, you probably end up seeing 100K out of him in the first few weeks. And then you make decisions from there as to what you want to do. But that's kind of what you want from your fourth front rower. Punt along, make you some cash, and you can upgrade or use that cash elsewhere.
Yeah, just a bit of cash generation. Maybe you bottom him out at some stage, or move on to somebody that you're comfortable to put that reserve tag on.
That's right. So, mate, take us through your centre wing. Your 2RF, because there's a bit going on here. There's a few talking points, so go ahead.
Dave Fafita's been there since day dot. I just see the upside, and him being the only second rower that has a score like 160 in him. Look, there's a lot of chat about Cam Murray, and I would love to have Cam Murray in my team. But for the 60k saving, being able to bolster some other positions, he's not the most consistent player in the world. But we're talking about Dave Fafita having a bad season last year, and he averaged 66. I think that warrants how well he is owned at the moment. Just a really good, exciting player playing beside his best mate. 19% owned. Yeah, happy to have Fafita. Titans score a lot of points.
Yeah, they do, mate. He can do it himself as well. Grab the ball from dummy half, run half the field. So fend off 6 blokes, carry 3 over the line. We've seen him do it year in year.
Yeah.
So
and if I was a coach that has a few question marks about him, like the Titans coach, I would be finding my best player the ball.
Justin Holbrook had his coaching career on the line all of last year as well somehow, and Fafita saw no ball. So
I don't know why he's still there then.
Yeah, and that's the question mark. I think he's got probably about 5 games to show that he can still do the job there. Yeah, and I'd say that I'd be relying on my $1.2 million forward to carry me to eternal glory and make me save my job.
It is a contract year too.
That's a relevant point. That is a relevant point. Mate, Teague Wilton is a new addition to your team. I don't think I've seen him in your team recently.
Yeah, I found myself with a bit of cash, and there was a big question with this cash, and it's going to depend on actually the Panthers wingers. It's going to depend whether I have Teague in my team. Tossing up between Egan Butcher and Teague Wilton. I just don't want too many Roosters in my team. I think Teague Wilton's edge will, if he plays 80 minutes, he can score a lot of points. He's always scored at that sort of 0.6 ppm, which isn't super exciting, but having he's a workhorse, and having blokes like Mulatalo, having blokes like Talakai beside him, he should be really, really good. Wade Graham seems to be, when he's going to come in, he's going to play at lock. I'm a bit confused about their rotation with Cam McInnes and Wade Graham. But if it looks like Teague Wilton's going to be playing 80 minutes, he'll be in my team. If it looks like he's not, I'll probably pivot to someone like Egan Butcher. And I'll explain a bit later on about what I'm doing with Panthers wingers. So. And
to be fair, Cam McInnes can play hooker as well. He can relieve Brayley. We know Blake Brayley is an 80-minute hooker as well, so it just depends how they use him there. But I feel like when you've got McInnes and you've also then got 3 other forwards on the bench, they'll probably rotate through the middle a fair bit. Neither of their props are going to be playing big minutes. You've got Britton Nakora on the other side, though, so it just depends. I think it's a very close watch on what their bench makeup looks like when Team List Tuesday drops as to whether you go with Wilton or not. But honestly, he does need 80 minutes if he's going to be relevant. But we saw what he did for Mulatalo and Talakai. We talked about that last episode when we touched on the centre wings. So we know how influential he is to this team. I don't think it would make much sense to not roll with him at 80 minutes on the left edge. So I like it.
And that's what I'm thinking. 490k is a little bit of an awkward price. He only come into my team today, actually. But found myself with a little bit of cash and decided to spend it.
Bit of Team List Tuesday Eve shuffling around, bit of Tetris going on over there. It makes it feel loaded.
I actually went from Ray Stone to Teague Wilton. So,
okay. Mate, the next guy, I think I've seen on Twitter, you post at least 15 times and comment on people's team lists saying, not enough Niokore.
Yeah, I actually rate, you're on Twitter, you do a podcast, and people are like, oh, can you rate my team? I'm like, 6 out of 10, not enough Niokore. You will get a 10 out of 10 if you have this man in your team. He is going to score a lot of points. I don't really like the Garner pick. I think you called him a professional decoy. He could get 80 minutes on the edge, and he's always scored at a good PPM. He's always sort of scored that played that 40 minutes and scored about 40. If he can play 80 and he can bang out 60 to 70 points every week, which is not unrealistic, I'm really excited about Murata Niokore.
Yeah, fair. I like it, mate. Our teams are very similar at the moment. We'll talk through a few differences soon, but mate, keep flying through because these three on your bench, and one of them's a big talking point. I know Jermaine Hopgood's a bit of a lock. Everybody should have him in their team.
He should be 100% owned. He should be 100% owned.
Let's have a look.
But I'll have a quick chat about another guy from Parramatta, Matt Dory.
51%.
Yeah,
Hopgood,
yeah,
51%.
And I probably expect it to go up to about 60% shortly. Hopefully a few people, if they have Schuster in their team, might go Hopgood. But Matt Dory, I wanted a cheapie at centre wing. Looks like he's going to play on that edge. Even the news of Bryce Cartwright being back and going to play a little bit, that'll be hopefully on Sean Lane's side. Yeah, I just think Matt Dory's a lock. Going to get a bit of cash generation. I'm probably not going to play him maybe any week. Maybe we need to temper our expectations a little bit because Parramatta do have that really hard draw to start. But yeah, I think he should be pretty highly owned. I'm pretty happy to have him, actually.
Yeah, cool. Mate, Josh Schuster, big talking point. Talk us through your logic as to why you have him at the moment based on that injury.
So at the very least for week 1, and I don't think I'm going to trade him out. I think I'm going to sit him there basically just as enough. I'm going to play that VC captain loop, and I like to have a lot of players that are playing. I don't like to have any Dragons. I was actually watching, basically no one watched our Dragons podcast because no one cared. They are not very good at football. They're going to find themselves last, probably worse than the Dolphins, and they've got Ben Hunt and everybody else is suspended or injured. I don't have any of them in my team, which sort of, it's going to be easy week 2 because I'm going to have some of those guys in my team. It's going to be easy when the Roosters have a bye because I'm always going to have them in my team. Hey, we're talking about the Warriors aren't going to be fantastic. I have some of those guys in my team. I'm not having any Dragons, and I really do want to play the captain's loop.
Yeah, that's good logic. A lot of people won't be riding with Dragons players. I mean, if you're riding with Tyrell Sloan or you're going with Ben Murdoch-Masila or one of those guys, I can probably understand why you would. But in saying that, I think Schuster's the perfect loop. I think also, though, are you paying, and my question to you is, are you happy to pay for 1 week of a loop, but hold a guy for potentially 6 rounds for a price rise? Because, like we said before, there's a big risk at the moment that Schuster doesn't return until potentially round 4. He might miss round 3. This calf injury might become a little bit more of a big deal because of the pre-exposed injury that he's had to all of his calves and ankles in the past 3 years. Then you hold a guy and you don't get a price rise for 6 weeks. And that's my concern with Schuster, is that are we going to be holding a guy we're not going to see anything from? He's going to sit on the bench for 6 weeks just for use of the captaincy loop and to save 1 trade.
Yeah, and trust me, we're all guys that tinker with our teams, and I have, pop Schuster out and put Ray Stone in. They're basically exactly the same price. If Ray Stone looks like he's going to get, again, it's TLT dependent. If Ray Stone's starting at lock, Josh Schuster's probably out of my team and I don't play that captain loop. We'll see. There was chatter of Gilbert there. I'm not sure what I like. I don't really like much of it for Supercoach, but yeah, maybe Ray Stone comes into my team for Josh Schuster, and, I heed that, but the talk of the camp is he should be back round 3 or 4. So,
yep. Fair enough. Halfback, 5'8", fire away. Nathan Cleary, bit of a no-brainer, really.
Absolute lock. Honestly, another guy that could be 100% owned, really. He's fantastic. He is 53% owned. And I've got Tanner Boyd. You'll notice I don't have Isaiah Katoa. Obviously, I was very confident that Isaiah Katoa wasn't going to be playing in the first grade at the start.
Yeah, we saw that.
And Uncle Wayne does what Uncle Wayne does. If I need to move on at some stage, with duels, I'm probably going to look to whoever does the worst out of Kalen Ponga, Adam Dwayne, Tanner Boyd, Reece Robson, or Brandon Smith. So via, Boyd in duels and Katoa being a dual halfback and 5'8", I just think it gives me a lot of flexibility. If you've got Katoa in your team, you're not going to be playing him. So why have him these first few rounds? I'm going to get some guys that are going to get me points.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep. I really like Tanner Boyd. I really like his connection with Fafita. He's a sharpshooter, really good goal kicker. Actually shoots better than Hazem El Masri out there.
Bit of a smaller sample size, don't you think?
Yeah, a little bit of a smaller sample size, but let's roll with it. Let's roll with the facts. Adam Dwayne, speaking of goal kickers, at the West Tigers looking a lot better. Him having some really good players outside of him. I believe he's on Nofaluma's side too, who looks, at least the chatter is that he looks fantastic at training and, he wants to revive his career. And if he can run back you've seen those damaging runs that he has in those first one or two tackles and off the kicks. If he can come back, he's on Dwayne's side. I'm really excited that West Tigers are going to be better. Therefore, Dwayne's going to be better. Matty Burton dropped out of my side today. I needed that 70K to get Teague in. And looking at Kalen Ponga, I was just looking at some of the blokes he had around him, and I just think he's going to be a lot better. Of course, the question mark comes if he can be on the park. But actually, the Isaiah Katoa news made me a lot more confident in putting Ponga in. Burton looked a bit rusty in those trials. Yeah, how easy is it going to be if Ponga gets concussed, which he's very well known for, just to drop back to Katoa, get your cash generation, save yourself a heap of money, or just go to Matty Burton. It's only 70K difference. This is my logic in my halves at the moment. So
yeah, and we also need to remember the Newcastle Knights draw is elite to start the season. It's a very nice draw, and we know the quality of player that Ponga is. So he could honestly come out and go ton, and make everybody look silly that didn't start with him. And that's the ultimate pod that you're looking for, a guy with really high upside, a guy with immense talent. He isn't goal kicking, which is a little bit of a damper on the spirits of the people that are taking Ponga. But in saying that, look, I mean, you don't really need him to goal kick at his best. So let's hope that 5'8" really agrees with him. He's had a good connection with those guys in the spine throughout the preseason. And he comes out guns blazing. Nice.
I've heard Jacko is a fantastic teammate, and I think Jacko might steer him around the park a little bit and just let Kalen be Kalen, that damaging runner, those short balls. I'm excited just to see him play footy.
100%. I'm with you. Mate, let's move on to your centre wing, and we'll chuck fullback in there as well.
Yep.
Plenty happening here, mate. We just did it. We just come off the back of our centre wing pod yesterday, which went for about an hour and 15 minutes because there's so much to talk about here. Where do you want to start? Obviously, Val Holmes.
Yeah, let's start at Val Holmes. I've talked now for the 205th time about how good the Cowboys draw is, and I want a piece of that. 724K is usually not how much money I'm looking to spend at the start of the year in the centre wing, but I'm actually scared not to have him. Being a goal kicker, I think they're going to put on a lot of points. Val Holmes, the Jets running back out there. There's going to be a lot of points. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go ton, and everybody has to get him in.
I've captained him in one of the drafts that I did recently. He's my captain in round 1. And if you don't play captains during draft, you're a pussy.
Yeah, you are a coward.
So, Val Holmes with the C, the big dog. So carry me to glory.
Just to put you into my headspace, I reckon about 40 times I have scrolled over Val Holmes and just went VC, and then I've went back to Cleary, and then I've went back to Val. I'm not sure. I want to captain Tedesco against the Dolphins. But yeah, no, the vice captain could definitely find himself on Holmes round 1.
Beautiful.
And that's another reason that I want Schuster in my team. I know it's a big risk, and I'm going to see where Ray is, but yeah, But let's go to Bizza. He's a Panther. He's on the wing. He's a damaging runner. Probably coming... he's always sort of scored that 55-60, but yeah, I could just see an uptick. I could definitely see a really good run of games for him as well. I think 620k. Like if he's 30k cheaper, you're talking about him as a mid-ranger, and with that pedigree, I want him in my team. What do you think about To'o?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, To'o is that guy that back, I think, what was it, 2021? He averaged 83, I think, was on the wing, on the left wing for Penrith. I think the one thing we do need to consider with Brian To'o is the fact that in 2021, they just introduced that 6 again rule, and that really impacted defense. That really impacted and benefited a lot of wingers. There was so many overlaps that year because defenses weren't really adjusting that well to that 6 again rule. They were caught off guard a lot throughout the 2021 season, and obviously that was COVID-affected season as well. So there was a lot happening during that season. Are you concerned at all the fact that when every other year Brian To'o has averaged between 57 to 60, that maybe we're looking at what the true average will be for Brian To'o, as aside from that anomaly season of 2021?
No, because you're not disappointed in getting that amount of money and getting exactly what it says on the packet. He has that tremendous base, especially for a winger, that you usually don't see. We talked about him so much last year that when I go to type in 2 to people, it actually autocorrects to To'o. So that's how much I think of him.
That's true. He was a big talking point nearly every year that we played Supercoach. That's a fair call.
Yeah.
CNK was a big talking point on our Centre Wing podcast because we don't necessarily agree too much about CNK, but he's in both of our teams, but for different reasons, I guess. But there are some concerns for me specifically. What about yourself? Why is he there for you at the moment?
So he actually left at one stage today because I was looking at where to spend that extra money from, the news of Jordan McLean. I went Burton down and found myself with a couple $100K, but I just didn't like any guy around $500K. I would have called myself a coward if I put Katoni Staggs in, which he was very close to being in my team today. If someone like Suolihi or somebody like that was under 530, I can't see myself adding Coates. I can't talk myself around into Staggs, and that's why I went a bit safer. We're in the second row. CNK will play fullback. It looks like he's going to play fullback, even if at least to start. And I think at centre he's priced still unders. I think he's priced unders regardless of if he plays centre or fullback. Blokes like Sloan, Hayes Perham, Hammer, they're not going to perform. CNK, whether he's at the centre, whether he's at fullback, is going to at least beat that average. And to be honest, even if he got his average and I needed to find a way to move on because he's not getting that cash generation, we're going to get a bit of a price rise out of CNK. We're talking about him at 320K, and he is a really good football player.
Yeah, I think when we're looking purely at price, yeah, for sure. You probably make some cash out of him. The one concern for me is you need to play him every week. So, I mean, is he the guy that can get you the 40 to 50 every single week? I don't know. I reckon there's some inconsistencies, and we need to remember he's playing for the New Zealand Warriors. He's not playing for the Rabbitohs. He's not playing for a top 8 team. He's playing for a bottom 8 team who probably are going to concede a lot of points. There are going to be some issues defensively in this team as well, and is CNK going to be used as a bit of a stopgap to stop the leak of points? We've talked about this a little bit. I won't talk too much about it again, but that's the only concern for me. It does make sense to take a guy that is named at fullback that you can pick in the centre wing in NRL Supercoach, and that's obviously why he's there, and he's very highly owned for the majority. But for me, I'm not 100% sold on him just yet. So
I've talked a lot about what I thought about Adam Dwayhe, and I've actually seen your team, so so we can lead into this and it be very, very relevant. I wanted somebody from the Tigers, one of those cheap players, but I don't think Grass Staines was the answer. Ken Mamalo got injured. I don't know how many questions I've asked you about Brent Naden, but I never thought I'd be talking about Brent Naden when it come to Supercoach. Tommy Talau's a turnstile. Junior Taupo Tupou, I don't even really see starting to start. If one of those guys emerged, or I saw a bit more from Tommy Talau, which looks like he'll get named, if I saw a bit more from one of those Tigers players, I would be a bit more high on them than CNK. I don't think it's that hit out of the park that we think that it is. But I'm also banking on maybe one of these cheaper guys, like your Jordan McLeans, like your Alamotti, like your Khan Pereira, like your Warbrick. Hopefully one of those guys emerge as a bloke that I can play every week. And as you see, I've went heavy in some other positions. I've got Cleary, I've got Tedesco, I've got Robson, I've got Cotter, I've got Fafita. I'd rather take that risk in centre wing because I see some of these cheapies getting some 14s, getting some 20s for me. But yeah, I can see him rolling out on 60 when I get really lucky. So I'm rolling the dice.
And you've got 4 200k basement price cheapies in your team in McLean, Alamotti, Khan Pereira, and Warbrick. They're all pretty self-explanatory, really, when we look at these 4 guys. I mean, McLean, we talked about at the start with the news coming out saying that him and Taruva are pretty much even neck and neck to take that right wing. And then we've also got then Alamotti's locked into centres for the Bulldogs. Khan Pereira's
doesn't he look like a beast? Both of those guys.
The guy's an animal. Is like I said in the last pod, Tavita Pangai Jr., if he played in the centres and could run probably 37 kilometres an hour, that's Paul Alamotti. That's pretty impressive. The guy's a tank. And then Khan Pereira is the quickest bloke on the Titans roster. He'd probably give most quick blokes on any roster a good run.
Yep. And Will Warbrick was a sevens player. It's a bit of a placeholder. I don't really see Iramia getting picked after how good Warbrick looked. But hey, it is Bellamy. And, I might have to... If Jordan McLean and Warbrick don't get named, even if one of them don't get named, Teague Wilton's back out again. I go cheaper, and I'm going to have to bolster this a little bit. And I'm probably just going to have to roll the dice on someone like that Tommy Talau. I bet you never had questions in your inbox about Brenton Aiden like I was asking today.
I have not. You are the first. So, but yeah. No, I like Brent Naden as a player, but yeah, I don't know whether he's Supercoach relevant, but we'll see, mate. Last but not least is the Teddy and Turbo combination, which seems to be the most popular combination in the fullback position for the majority of people that know what they're doing when it comes to Supercoach, mate. So, anything to add on those two?
Teddy explains himself. I still can't believe how much Turbo's getting owned. It's all the question marks, and I actually copped a bit of slack on the old social media for having Turbo to start, and it was one of our first podcasts. But I've always sort of thought that it was a no-brainer. He's now 37% owned, so as people are downloading the app, they're looking at Turbo. He seems set to go. Tedesco is always going to be a captain option. Mate, this guy was, and I know it was an inflated season, but he was worth $1,200K at some stage, and you're buying him for $577. Just get him in your team. If he gets injured, there is always going to be a cheaper option. Like, honestly, for example, if he got injured, I could just go Ponga down to fullback, put Isaiah Katoa in, and then suddenly I'd have cash to burn. There is absolutely no risk with having Turbo, but there is a risk that he's going to score 100 if you don't have him.
Big time. I'm too scared about what Turbo's going to do to me when I'm not looking. So, yeah, it's got to be those two, mate. But, mate, that wraps up your team.
That's my team. If I had to rate it, 6 out of 10 because it's got Murata Niokore in it.
Mate, I reckon it's an 8 out of 10 because it's got Murata Niokore in it. So, mate, well, before we move on, just as a reminder, we have an unlimited group available for Molten Fantasy Sports. So if you want to take on the community here at Molten and you want to verse the Supercoach community and try and take out a championship ring and get an episode on the podcast with us here at Molten, jump into that group. We're going to be closing off entries very early in the season in the first couple of rounds, so make sure to get in there before we close those entries off so that you can go in the running to win. I think I might even have the championship ring behind me. Here we go. It's when I open it, there you go. You wouldn't find me on The Bachelor because I don't know how to open a ring box, but it's right there. So proof that we've got the ring ready to go. It's very nice. You wear this one to work, I reckon, Matty, if you win. I'm going to look good with that on, and I see it happening. There's only about 140 in there, so well, you do have Murata Niokore in your team, so mate, you're going to be hard to beat this year, I think.
Lock and load on Niokore. I'm so high on Niokore.
You reckon? I'm not sure that that came across. So, mate, we'll dive into my team unless you had something to add.
No, I was just going to say I might change my team name to, I don't know, something to do with Murata Niokore. Slide into my DMs and give me a team name.
I like it. Drop it in the comments as well. Gives Matty some suggestions there.
Yeah.
Mate, so we'll get into... I've actually changed my team name. Now it's...
this is what I'm most excited about.
Sheensy's Revival is here for 2023, mate. Timmy Sheens is going to take the Tigers to glory in 2023. Top 8, here we come. Sheensy's Revival is going to be in some serious form this year.
Mate, you sound like a drink that you buy after a hangover.
That's fine. You know what? If I go better than I did last year, happy days. We'll be in a good spot. So, mate, let's start with hookers. I've got Brandon Smith and Tanner Boyd. I've gone a bit cheaper. I haven't gone with Reece Robson like you have. Purely the reason being, I think, is that when you can slot in a guy like Brandon Smith in the hooker position, I'm more than happy to play him every week. And then, obviously, with Tanner Boyd, like when you're linking up with David Fafita on the right side of the field, you're playing for the Titans that are a very high-scoring, high-attacking, dominant team. They will leak some points, but obviously they're going to score some as well. I'm pretty happy to filter based on matchups whether I put the reserve on Tanner Boyd or not, based on what the rest of my side looks like. So I'm going cheap at hooker so that I can spend up elsewhere.
Yeah, and I see you're playing in week 1. So remind me, who are the Titans playing week 1?
They've got the Tigers week 1, mate. And did you know, fun fact, that the Tigers have not beaten the Gold Coast in the last 12 matchups, whether that be at Leichhardt, Campbelltown, wherever. Titans have been, I think, 12-0 against the Tigers.
So you said that depending on matchup, you're going to play Tanner Boyd. How do you expect the Tigers to go week 1?
Probably not very well.
I'm just curious. I actually knew who the Titans were playing, so
not very well. I actually feel like it might be a high scoring game. I feel like there might be some cohesion issues. So we'll see how we go.
Yeah, no, I like the reserve. I actually don't have the reserve on him week 1, so yeah.
See how we go, mate. And I've got exactly the same front rowers as you, so we don't really need to repeat ourselves with this. We've just cracked the hour mark for this episode, so it's pretty easy with the double ups that we've got in our teams that we don't need to touch twice on these players. I love them all, which is why I agreed on all of them. The only difference that I can see here between the team that we have, I did take Egan Butcher out very recently. I think you did too, though. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I had Butcher when we were doing all the podcasts, and I really like him. I had the money fatigue. I had an extra 10K. I spent it.
There's a lot of options in the second row that you can go in the mid-range. There's Elias Katoa. There's Trent Loiero from the Storm. Honestly, there are probably 10 blokes that I could go through here in the second row that could actually slot in relatively well and do a job for you. Now, I'm going with those guys as the reasons that you've mentioned. I'm pretty high on all three of those. And Jermaine Hopgood's an absolute lock-in. That's an easy decision. Matt Dory, a bit of a placeholder. We'll see what comes of Teamless Tuesday, but it seems like he's narrowed down that right edge second row role at Parramatta, at least until Ryan Madison's back in the conversation. So I'm happy to ride that 4 weeks and see what happens with that. Sean Keppie is the one player that's different. I don't have Schuster here. So I've got Sean Keppie. The reason I don't have Schuster is because I mentioned before, I'm concerned about those recurring calf injuries. 3 calf injuries, 3 calf strains in 3 years. There's a lot to be worried about there. There's a lot of red flags. And yes, he is $234,000. He's cheap as chips. But I want to have that option to downgrade to him. I want to back off the Schuster. If one of these mid-rangers, like a Wilton or a Niokore or whoever it be, or even Fafita, if he starts really slowly and poorly, I can go straight down to Schuster, and then I can either use that cash with that trade, or then I can use that cash elsewhere in other positions if I am struggling in other positions. So I like Schuster as a downgrade option because he also is a dual. So I can use him to downgrade a second rower, or I could use him to downgrade a 5'8" that hasn't fired yet as well.
Yeah, I really like Keppie, and I had him in my team, but I have heard the rumblings that maybe Gerbo was just playing there for the trial. If Keppie starts at lock, he'll be in my team as well.
Yeah, that's my hope. If he doesn't start at lock and he starts off the bench, I'll find somebody else around that price. I think Jackson Ford is a really good watch as well at the Warriors. I think that he's a chance to lock down an edge role if they end up playing guys like Curran off the bench like they did in the trial. So there's a lot to watch there too.
And that might even be something to watch with Niokore. As much as I hate to mention it, I think Niokore is better than Jackson Ford. But if Jackson Ford gets that role and Niakore's, a bit iffy there, definitely look elsewhere. So.
For sure. One thing to note as well, I think, with Niokore is there's a chance that he may play through the middle a little bit as well. So he may end up in the middle and the edge rotation. So there's a little bit more question marks around Niokore there too. But Nathan Cleary, lock him in. Sammy Walker. So, mate, Sammy Walker's come into my team today after I found out that Nico Hines is very touch and go for round one. Wacko's Whispers actually come out and said that he's been ruled out for round one. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. What I do know, though, is that there is so much risk, as good as Nico Hines is, taking a guy that's carrying a niggle. Let's say he does hypothetically get named in round one. Are you still 100% confident that he's going to be at his best? That's the question you need to ask yourself. Are you going to waste $900,000 on a guy that's 60% fit? 70% fit, and I can tell you right now that there's no way that Craig Fitzgibbon is risking Nico Hines if he's 60 to 70% fit.
No. I didn't know you had Sam Walker.
Yeah, I threw a little bit of a spanner at you there. That's mate, the reason I have Sam Walker is because the Rabbitohs are playing the Dolphins in round one. The Roosters are playing the Dolphins in round one. Rabbitohs, when did he get traded across?
Wrong Walker.
Yeah, wrong Walker Cody. Yeah, so I always get my Sams and my Codys mixed up. So.
Yeah, they're brothers, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. So long lost, I'm told. But no, Sammy Walker, goal kicker, being given the keys to Bondi. We know that he's got a superb spine around him. Imagine being able to link up with guys like Nat Butcher, who's come a long way in the last couple of years. He'll probably play that left edge role for 80 minutes. You've got Teddy, you've got Sawali, you've got Tupou on that left edge. Mate, you could honestly get to any of those blokes and create anything that you wanted, really. So I think he's going to take a step up. I'm going to say that he will be the third highest scoring or highest averaging halfback in the competition behind Cleary and Hines this year.
Yep.
So that's my free up of cash.
My little analysis of your team now, this makes a lot of sense as to why I saw Egan Butcher leave your team today.
Because I can't have 4 Roosters.
No, that's especially with that early, buy. Hey, you'd love to have Egan Butcher in there.
Honestly, I would love to have him instead of Teague Wilton. That was the swap that I did because they're around the same price. So that was the only reason I swapped Egan Butcher out. I'd love to have him, but I just can't, and I prefer Sam Walker down from Nico Hines.
Sam Walker's the goal kicker, and I've talked so much about Robson, but if you look at your DMs from like a week ago, I was just like driving home and just alone with my thoughts, and I was like, I think I need Sam Walker in my team. I think that I've got to get rid of Robson, and I did it for a night. I slept on it, and I was like, you've been so sure about Robson, and I think that that's really important if you're there and you've really just got a gut feeling about a guy, you just have to go with him. And yeah, I was fading Walker to go Robson, and I'm going to carry it into round one. Lock it in.
Fair call. Adam Dewey, Tigers fan, second year back from an ACL, plenty to love. He's got Nofaluma on his side. He's got Johnny Bateman coming over from the UK. Honestly, I don't think I've been this excited about a West Tigers side since 2005. There's plenty going on over there. There's plenty of hype. Adam Dewey said he wants to be in the leadership group as well, which is massive for me. I think when you put your hand up and say, hey, I want to lead this team, it means you're serious about playing some quality football this year. And we know from NRL physio stats that everybody in the second year back from an ACL always has an improved performance in that second year back. So Adam Dewey is from NRL physio. He's the injury pick of the year this year. Really? Adam Dewey.
Lovely.
So I like it. And there's been a bit of contention about how to say his name, Matty.
Yeah.
So
yeah, is it Dwayne? I think during the World Cup he said that he, just being around that team, he said that he prefers it to be Dewey. So that's why I've went with it. I really like saying do we or don't we? Because we do. But actually heading back to you not being excited about a Tigers side, what was that? Since you were 15. I actually love your hair from when you were 15. I actually scrolled through the Facebook.
Did you see it?
If you could bleach your hair again, that would be fantastic.
I'll quickly pop a photo of me back when I was 15 into this little... If you're watching on YouTube, there's some incentive to watch on YouTube. I'll pop a little photo in there from back in the day.
I'm excited. It's hot.
Mate, that's it. That was the trend back then, mate. Long, streaked, blonde hair, straightened hair as well. I didn't muck around back then, mate. And you could tell I pulled a lot of chicks back then too.
Oh, yeah, yep. Everybody loved it, I'm sure.
Mate, Isaiah Katoa is my reserve 5'8". Burton came out today for that, for Katoa to slot in. Bit of a no-brainer, pretty easy decision for me, I think. And look, it's allowed me to make some other decisions elsewhere in my squad. It's allowed me to have 2 mid-rangers instead of 1 in the second row. It's allowed me to have Cotter instead of running with Stefano and Welch in my front row. And it's also allowed me to play around a little bit with my centre wings, which let's go through them now because I'm pretty excited about my centre wing. I'm pretty strong here, to be honest.
Yeah.
Actually, we'll chuck my...
Can we just stop on the fade of Burton? I know that Burton's been very well owned and he didn't look really good in the trials. I've only faded Burton today. You've only faded Burton today. Is it for the Antipod?
No, it's not. I mean, look, it's a bonus to have him as an antipod, but I think for me, the particular reason is that I feel like the Bulldogs may start a little bit slower. They might start a little bit slower than everybody thinks. They're a brand new spine. They've got Reid Marnie, and it's going to take time for Reid Marnie to get his combinations with Burton right. It's going to take Kickow some time to get his combination with Burton right. So I feel like they're 2 pretty key combinations in this Bulldogs lineup at the moment, especially on offense.
Yeah, I don't mind the Bulldogs draw, though. Sea Eagles, Storm, Tigers, Warriors. But then they do step into some tough games in the Cowboys and the Rabbitohs. Yeah.
And we know, looking at, as much as I love Burton, I'm a big fan of Burton, he can go sub 30. And honestly, when you play Melbourne and you play Manly, who are 2 teams that could be relatively strong this year, Turbo's back, Melbourne aren't any pushover. Burton could easily go sub 30, sub 40 in those 2 games, and he's looking at 140 break even against the Tigers. And let's face it, look, he could hit that. But I'm happy to. I just think the Antipod is a bonus on top of the fact that I'm not 100% confident anymore that Burton is going to start red hot like everybody's saying he is.
I just wanted to touch on that because of how well owned he is. And he was in around that 40%, but he has dropped back around that 30%, and so have we. We've both dropped him in that sort of period too. He was lock and load for you talked me around to him. And yeah, for me to go Ponga, for you to go Katoa. Yeah, it's good chat.
Yeah, he's the guy that has to go, unfortunately. But I still like him. I still like Burton. I still might pick him up at some point this year, but it's too good to not have a crack at Ponga or not have a crack at Katoa at basement price. So,
excellent.
Mate, remember we actually recorded the centre wing pod yesterday. Do you remember my tactic for the centre wing pod?
Yeah, you were going 1 cheap. No, one premium, and then the rest was cheap. And I see Brian 2. As my autocorrect says, and yes, I could write a bit of poetry with Brian 2 and Greg Marzoo there.
Bit of limericks going on here.
And NRL children's books for Liam and Theo. So
that's it. We might have to keep that one on the download. That could be a business opportunity, mate. So, mate, Brian Toto, he's in my team. He's a no-brainer. You've already spoken about him. Mate, Greg Marzoo is the guy I want to talk about because I really like the Knights draw. I've mentioned that at the start. When we talked about Ponga, we talked about how good that Knights draw is the first 3 games. Mate, if Ponga gets going, we both benefit because Greg Marzoo is going to have an absolute monster of the first 3 rounds. We know that the draw's friendly, and Greg Marzoo broke 9 tackles, I think it was, in that trial game, scored a try, just looks like a beast. 581. He could easily have a really nice first 3 rounds and be 650 to 700 by round 4 or 5. And then I'm more than happy. Look, if this bottoms out and I end up failing with Greg Marzoo and it ends up being a bit of a bust, I just downgrade him. before he loses price, I can downgrade him to someone else because I can guarantee you there will be another cheapie that pops up somewhere in the centre wing that I could pick up and take that price rise and bank that cash and free up some cash to go elsewhere and upgrade another position if I need.
I think this is the ultimate luxury addition. I think the fact that you've gone basically via Jules from Nico Hines and Burton to Katoa and Sam Walker has allowed you to do a lot with your team. I don't hate it because I'm actually banking on Marzu to have a great year through Ponga, and we've both sort of identified the same thing because we talk a lot about Supercoach. We've both identified the same thing and gone, Knights, great draw. I don't. Geez, he looked like. Did he have 9 tackle busts in the second? He just looks like a man mountain. The eye test is there, isn't it?
I mean, he did some good things at the Titans last year, and obviously the Knights have gone and taken him and paid him to come across and hopefully.
I think the Titans let him go because of his defense, not his offense, though.
They did. That's my concern, and I said that yesterday when we talked about centre wing. Is that my concern for Greg Marju is the fact that he loses his spot on defense because he's not great on defense. And also we need to remember that Anari Tuala is floating around in the wings, and as is Heimel Hunt. So there's 2 guys here wanting Greg Marju's position, but I'm banking on the fact that they've gone and got this guy from another club, and they're going to give him an extended run before they write him off completely. I feel like that's his position to lose, and he's a quality player. So I'm going to back him in a friendly draw to see if he can make me some cash, and perfect pot option for me personally, I think.
I'd ask a lot of question marks if you didn't have Brian To'o in your team as well, because I do think if the choice is there between Marzu and To'o, that you have to go with the pedigree rather than rolling the dice. But yeah, it's calculated risk, and you could start on absolute fire those first 3 rounds.
Yeah, that's my plan. And I think I'm a little bit concerned. You notice that I don't have Charles Nickel-Klokstad. I don't have any of the popular mid-range cheapies. I've got 3 basement price guys that you have. And I also have Taruva that could easily end up turning into McLean. So I'm basically picking that position is reserved for whoever ends up starting on the right wing for the Panthers. Yeah. So whether it's Taruva, whether it's McLean, whether it's... I don't even know. I could save myself 75 grand there with McLean, and then I could even end up turning somebody else into. I could turn Teague Wilton into Adam Elliott if I really wanted to. You know, I probably would consider that. I probably wouldn't go with that initially, but I mean, I've got options then to upgrade another position elsewhere if I really wanted to. I could turn David Fafita into Cam Murray. You know, I've got freedom to do a few different things with this squad with that extra cash.
And that's my issue going the other bloke. I've just heard some things about McLean, and it did allow me that flexibility. You wouldn't go Marzu up?
Oh, no.
Go on.
Sorry, go. No. I was just going to say...
I actually hate the mid-ranges in centre wing.
That's why I've gone with 3 primos, because I feel like... I mean, 581 is technically mid-range, but I'm going to call it premium for the centre wing, considering we're not really spending much there. I like 3 premiums and 4 cheapies now. The more that I've looked at my team, I'm like, you know what? There's some really good mid-range options in the center, in the 2RF this year, and in the front row. So if you utilize those mid-range options there, you can bolster your team in one of the weakest positions in Supercoach.
Question: if Selwyn Cobbo is named fullback because Reece Walsh isn't ready, do you go that over Marju?
You know what I saw today? Reece Walsh is out round 1.
Yeah,
I can't believe we haven't spoken about this already. But the problem is, Selwyn Cobbo will not be fullback when Walsh returns, which is likely round 2. So, do you pick him up knowing that he's fullback for round 1 and then go, oh, he's back to the wing? You know, he's a good player on the wing, don't get me wrong. But honestly, I like the upside of Marju, who could score you 100 3 weeks in a row. He could score 4 tries in the first 3 weeks and 15, 20 tackle breaks, and he could score you 300 points in that first 3 rounds. Imagine the difference there as a pod.
Yeah, I do think that 580 up, you can get some really quality people, but geez, it was a barren wasteland looking at that 500 and, you know, that even 420 up to that 580. Like, you're talking about Coach, you're talking about Stags, you're spending the same amount of money on Marju for Cobbo. I really like it. I think he's the pick of them.
Yeah, when you look at between 370, which is Hayes Perham, Charlie Staines price, and then you go up to that 580, 590 mark where you start to see Suali'i, you start to see Marju, you start to see Cobbo. There's nothing in between that price. There's 200 grand of absolute nothing. So you're either going premium or you're going sub 370, I think. And I'm not looking at Hayes Perham either, by the way. I'm not looking at Charlie Staines. I'm not looking at those guys. I do like Isaac Thompson, and he was in my team today, but I feel like this is a really nice balance that I actually like at the moment. So I'm going to ride this into the next 24 hours, which is Team List Tuesday, and then I'll blow the whole thing up as I always do, and we'll start again. And my fullbacks are the same as you, mate, so there's no need to talk about that again. And we've been going for nearly an hour and 20 minutes. It's been a banger.
You have been a bloke that has said, I'm just going to straight see Tedesco. No matter what anyone else scores, I'm going to go. So you're a coward because you can't loop. It's probably the opposite way. You are so locked in on Teddy at captain that first round against the Dolphins. He could absolutely destroy him.
Yeah, I'm not a coward, mate. You're the coward because you don't back your captain. I'm backing my captain all the way, mate.
Yeah, true. He could score as many as there probably is Dolphins members.
He could. That's a really good way to wrap up our teams. We've got 20 at the moment. No, sorry, it's not even 24 hours. It's 18 hours until team lists at this point of recording right now.
I can't sleep. I've had dreams about Hayes Perham and Charlie Staines.
Yeah, you know what? It's going to be an interesting 18 hours because I can tell you right now that not everything will go to plan. There will be some people that don't get named. There will be really popular cheapies that don't find their way onto teams. There will also be some absolute smokies that come from nowhere and find themselves on the wing, in the centres, in the back row, on the bench for round one. So really exciting 24 hours coming up. I'm sure there's a lot going on, mate. What we're going to do, obviously, over the next coming days and into the season as well is to make sure that every single Tuesday we're going to do an analysis of all the team lists. So you're going to see that on Wednesday at some point once we get all the editing and the post-production done. So every Wednesday you will see a Team List Tuesday analysis from us at Molten Fantasy Sports. You're also going to get the Sunday Roast, which is going to be us wrapping up the week, talking through all the games, all the talking points, all the good stuff that's come from the NRL from the full weekend, and everything to do with Supercoach that you're going to need to consider coming into the following week. So plenty of exciting content coming up. Mate, we've got NBA coming up soon into pre-draft. The AFL boys over there are doing a great job in that strange sport where they play with a bit of soap. I still don't really understand it too much, do you?
Yeah. Look, I thought about it a lot, and then I just thought I'd mull it over for a bit longer.
Like, for any of our listeners that understood that, you can stay. If that went over anyone's head, you don't need to come back. I can appreciate that joke. That's a banger.
You can go for 10 if you don't get it.
But mate, I reckon that pretty much wraps us up. We've talked through our teams. Hopefully people have got a good insight into the direction that we're looking and the reasons as to why we picked certain players. We've done a ton of research over the last 8 weeks, I reckon, leading into this. Since the team picker opened, and this is where we've landed before Team List Tuesday. So what we'll do is we'll see you guys in a couple of days. We'll wrap up Team List Tuesday. We'll talk through all the ins and outs and all the big points in Supercoach. And just before we leave, make sure to hit that subscribe, hit that like if you found this beneficial, and turn those notifications on so you never miss Team List Tuesday. This has been the Molten Fantasy Sports Podcast. See you in a couple of days. See ya.
Roger.